In this video, we're going to focus on how we can create this nice shading range here, or shading area, on the line chart. And it's based on our own minimum and maximum values that we want to show. For example, here, or this one here, it hits, the minimum would be 15 and the max would be 20. And then here in the center is the line. We can assign how big or how small the thickness of this range or shading area is. So let's start to explore how to do this. So let's start to look how to add shading area in a line chart in Chartjs. So the first thing what we need is to get our default code, which you can find in chartjs3.com, getting started. And this link is also in the description box. Scroll down and just copy this entire chunk of code here. Once you copy this, and if you want to understand what this code does, make sure you watch this video here. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter and put that in there. Cut out the title here, put it in here. Save this, refresh, there we are. So now we have a basic bar chart. I want to convert this into a line chart. I'm going to remove the border width. We don't need that. So we have a nice thick border for the lines. Then we have a line here, and save that, refresh. There we are. So now we have this here, and I guess we can remove these colors. We only have one single color that I want to focus on, which will be the border color here. We can remove even the arrays. No need for this. And next I'm going to remove this. So we have a background color as well. Refresh. There we are. So just a quick note. I will make here a line, or the shading area will be based on a straight line. I will eventually create one with a curved line, but it requires a different approach or some more advanced items. I will cover that in a separate video. So what I'm going to do now is I want to have, for example, we have this range I want to create here. But this range should be based on values that we can assign. So what I'm going to do here is basically put in here and enter, and I'm going to say here this will be our, what will be the right term for this? This could be our shading range. Shading range. And then within the shading range, put it here. This could be an array. And then in here, I'm going to use curly braces. And then we say here a minimum value, where we specify the difference between. So for example, if I want to have 15 here, so then this will be 18 and 15 is 3. So a value of 3 difference. We also indicate here the difference. And then we are here for the max, the difference, but then in height, well, the max, then we have to calculate as well. So if I want 21 for this, so 18 or 21 minus 18 is 3 as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this multiple times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items here. So 7 times. And then make sure you have this space there. There we are. So I'm going to copy this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Alright, so what I will do now is just do some random numbers. You can do them as well. And then later on you will see how that looks like. So then same here. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 4, 7, 6. Alright. Save this, refresh. Of course, nothing happens here. And if you might get an error, make sure you put a comma here if ever you would have any other values below there. But probably you shouldn't have any. So then there we are. So of course here, nothing happens yet. But what happened is, basically this is just JavaScript. And we created now a new object or array in this data object. That's what we did here. So from there on, we can now start to play around with this. So in here, what I'm going to do is we're going to create, after the plug options, we're going to create a plugin. So we're going to say plugins here, and this can be shading area. This is shading area, and this is what we call a shading range. So basically, we create a shade behind the line. So then what I'm going to do here is a constant, and let me just define this block. So it's a shading area plugin block. Then we say constant shading area equals, so then here ID shading area, although I won't be using that, and then here the drawing time. So what I want to do with the drawing time, I want to draw it before we draw the data set here, basically these lines. So I'm going to say here before the data sets draw. So before we draw the data sets, we draw this area first. So in here we're going to use again arguments. We have 3 arguments: the chart, we have the arcs, which we won't be using, and we have here the plugin options, but we won't be using this as well. So what I'm going to do here is object destructuring, and if you don't understand what object destructuring is, I'm going to recommend you one of my other videos to watch. You can search it as well, object destructuring in Chart.js. That is very useful. So you have that, but I want to explain that, but just watch that video if you don't understand what I'm talking about. So I'm going to say a constant, and this constant here, curly braces, then equal chart. I'm going to grab it from this chart object here, and then what I want to do is the following. I'm going to say here, what is the items that I need? Well, basically, I will need 3 items, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe even 2. So I'll go to the CTX, because we want to draw on the chart, or in the area, and then next I want to have the chart area, and the chart area will define, of course, the top, bottom, left, right, width, and height. But most likely we will only use a few of these, so maybe later on we can remove them, but it doesn't matter. And then finally we have here the scales, and for the scales I want the X and Y. There we are. So now we have these, and now we can start to use shorthands for this. So what we're going to do here is first to start draw something. So to draw something, I'm going to say here, first of all, I'm going to say ctx save to save all variables above. And now we're going to use a lot of canvas writing, and the ctx was the canvas basically. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say a ctx.begin path. And this basically defines that we're now going to start create a new element, and every other element that we have will be skipped or will not be connected with this new shape that we're going to create. So then what I'm going to do here is the following. I'm going to give it a color. So it's ctx.fill style, and the fill style stands for coloring basically the background color of this element. Of course we don't have anything yet, but what I want to do here is I want to grab the color that we're going to use. Let's copy this, and we put that in there, semicolon. And then what I want to do here is I want to start the point where we're going to put the item, or basically we're going to start drawing. Where is the line that we start with? And while looking at this, you might see here this, and I guess we need to have some space here up, because if we have this shading area here above, this will be this will create a issue. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add up grays. So let me show you. Just quickly, I'm going to say grays, and then here grays we can say here, let's say 5 points. Save that, refresh. So what happens now is it will always have some additional space here above, and that's suitable for our shading area, because our shading area will always have more space here, or needs that additional space. Alright, so now we have this here. That's a tiny issue that we solved. What we're going to do now is going to start defining the ctx.move tool, indicating our starting point, and here we have the x and y coordinates. So what is our starting point on the x, and what is our starting point on the y? Well, basically what I want to do, if I have this minimum here of 3, you can imagine here, of course, what I want is basically this. I want to have from the 18, the minimum, so that will be 15, starting here. That will be a starting point, and then we're going to the next line, next, or next dot, etc., etc., until we come here. And then what we have to do is we have to make it to wherever it is up, and then we're going to draw again. So let's start with this. So here, for this, I'm going to use a specific command, which is built in Chartjs, which is called chart.get data set meta index number. In this case, for a data set is 0, so I'm going to say 0 dot data, and then here again the index number, which of course in our case is basically 18. Basically, and y, because we're here. This is the x, horizontal, of course. Sorry, before I get ahead of myself. So that's the x, and then here's the y. So first here Monday, that's 0, of course. Then dot x. So that's the first one. So the next one is the y coordinates. For the y coordinates, we have to look at what exactly we need. Well, basically, we want to have starting here with this, or we want to start here. So that will mean this minus 3. To do this, we're going to play around, and we're going to use some advanced tricks. Then I realized that I need to do that first. So what is the issue here? We have to put in a number, but in the canvas, how it's calculated is extremely, well, not complicated. It's tricky to play around. Why? Because it calculates in pixels. We have this here amount of pixels calculated from here at the very top, and then we have the other one here. If the minimum is 18 minus 3, so it will calculate this here till down, and that can create a huge issue. So what we need to do is we need to know all these ticks, how many pixels to be exact is one of those ticks, or more specifically, if we have from 0 to 1, how many pixels is that going up or down? Once we know that, we can start to quickly calculate this. So I'm going to show you exactly how we're going to do that. So I'm going to do here a console log. I'm going to show you the item we need. Well, basically what we need to be in the Y scale, because we are dealing with a vertical level. So save this, refresh, open up developer tab. Now you see all of these items here. Don't worry, because it's the loop or the animation. That's why it gives the items. However, it doesn't matter which one you take, because the scale size is always consistent. So then in here, you can see we get some information. And the one I want is basically this, height. Height would indicate this point to that point here, which is perfect, because now we know it's 251 pixels, or at least in this setting. If I have full screen, it's bigger. So it will depend on whatever your screen is, because it's dynamic. And this is very important, because it's dynamic, we must calculate it with a formula. So then what I need to know is next is I need to know how many points do we have. Because we have added grace, we have increased the amount of points. You can see here the max. So what we are going to do here is basically the height divided by the 25 points will give us an exact amount of pixels, very close to 10 pixels. If you can see, 250 divided by 25 is just, that's basically 25 times 10. But let's start to calculate this nicely. So what I'm going to do here, I'll say dot height, y dot height, divide by y dot, and then we're going to grab here, what was it? It was max, the maximum value. So later on, if we have more items, you will see it will nicely work. So if I save this, refresh, you will see here, we get about 10 point plus plus. So that's what we need. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just give this a proper amount name. So I'm going to give it a constant, and this constant will be called the tick height. There we are. So now we have a very important part covered. So once we have this, we can now copy this. And then what I want to do here is again work on our line here. So we have this, and then what we do here is the following. We're going to do exactly the same here. We copy all of this. Then we say here the y, because it's not an x anymore, because we're going to deal with the y. But then what we're going to do here is we're going to say plus. This is very important. You might say, well, if this is minimum, why are we going to increase the amount? Well, Canvas works like this. Up here 0, down is amount is the highest amount. So what we need to do is, if you want to go down, we need to increase the amount of pixels. If you want to go up, we need to decrease it. So that's very important to understand. So what I'm going to do here is, then we say here, whatever the value is, plus the tick height, and then multiply by, and what we're going to do here is we're going to grab basically the chart data, or more specifically, we want to grab this value here. So what I'm going to do is I say chart dot, and then we're going to say here data. Remember, we have here the data. So then data sets index 0, and then we go to shading range. As you can see, we're just working with an array here. So we have the data sets this dot data dot, oh sorry, that's not data, sorry, that data was not necessary, but data sets index 0, and then directly to shading range. Shading range, and then here index 0, because I want to get the minimum of the first one here. So then we say a dot min. So what happens now is it basically starts to move to this position here. Of course, if I save this and refresh, you won't see anything yet. We didn't draw anything yet. We only move the starting point, saying this will be your starting point, because the default starting point is somewhere in this here. So we have to move that to this point and say that it will be the official starting point. So once we did this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just duplicate this. We can duplicate this one now. Paste this. Then I'll change it. Instead of move to, we're going to say line 2. Line 2 will officially draw the line. So then what I'm going to do here is we have this, and then I'm going to say here just quickly the data number 1, this number 1, and then here shading number 1. All right. So we have now shading range number 1. That is because we're going to grab this one now. So to make sure, because we have here the fill style, I want to just draw the line first without any background color because we have no shape, so it will not be noticeable. So I'm going to say here ctx dot stroke style. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just grab this color and put it in here, say 0, save, and then of course here ctx dot stroke to draw the shape. So let's do this first and then refresh. Alright, so now as you can see here, this starts to work. Later on I'm going to give it a nice background color, but I guess we can just continue on. But as what we did here is too hard to maintain, and the reason why is we need to loop through this because we have how many data points? If you have 1000 data points, well, good luck. We cannot do that like this. So we need to do here a proper loop. So what I want to do here before we have the loop, how many times do we need to loop through this? Well, the answer is simple. What we need to do here is calculate how many labels we have. Why the amount of labels? Because in a chart, in Chartjs, the labels is dominant, and that's the amount of points that's being displayed on a chart at a time. So what we're going to do here is the following. We're going to say here, I'll just say a constant. Then what I'm going to say here is the, what is the proper name for this would be maybe the data points. And then we're going to say length. So we then say equal to what exactly? Well, we're going to go here, but of course, same here is chart. We say chart dot data dot, or maybe we can skip the data, so we can go from data directly to labels. So we say chart dot data. All right, that one is correct. And then to labels, don't need to go to data sets. This one here, labels dot length. When we have this, we will get here now the official length of it, which should be 7, but we have to do later on -1. So that's very important. And I guess we could even do that right away. -1. So we have only the items here because an array calculates from 0 to 6 instead of if there are 7 points. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have this for loop here. So we're going to create a for loop. And in this for loop, we're going to say here let I equals, and I realize that maybe we don't want to do this. I'll have to check if this might conflict. So I'm going to just remove that for now. Just do that one here. Say let I equals equal 1. And the reason why is we're already skipping this one here. As you can see here, we already have this one here defined as a starting point. So we don't have to put it in 0, or else we have again the same starting point. And then here, what I'm going to say here is the following. We're going to loop through I as long as this is bigger or not bigger than, or sorry, if I is smaller than our data point length. That is correct. So once we have this, semicolon, no, and then we say I plus plus incremental. Then what I want to do here is I'm going to copy this chunk of code here. Let's cut this out, put it in there. Once we did that, what I want to do here is I want to say I. Remember, this is number 1, so it starts immediately correctly. Here also I. Then we can save, oh, here as well, number 1 that needs to be converted to I. If I save this now, we should have here multiple items. And as you can see here, this one here will be a slight issue, so I will push that a little bit up. So what I'm going to do here is, or maybe even the minimum of our item could be higher, so or it should be lower on the Y scale. Anyway, doesn't matter. What is this here? Number 3. So here this we should be, if that's number 3, and well, that was this one here, so this is 5. Let's make this 3. Later on we can maybe increase the amount of items here. So anyway, we have this now. We have these points here. What we have to do now is we have to go back. And what I mean by back is we need here, because what we want to do here later on is to close this item. But if I do this right now, you will see something very interesting. If we say here, close path, save, refresh, it creates a line and it closes from a starting point and ending point. Of course, I don't want this. And this is also the most tricky part is, when I want to start with the next one, we cannot use the same methodology. We have to do exactly the mirror effect of this, meaning we have to go here and then there, and etc., until we are here, and then it closes. So this means we have to be very careful about how we're going to calculate this. However, it is very similar except the opposite direction. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to create here now another for loop. And let's call this for loop with the letter Z. And then here, let's Z equals the data point length. And we say data point length. And then we're going to do here -1. I guess that should be fine. And then what I want to do is a semicolon here, of course. And then we say here, let's see what we're going to do here. Of course, we say 0. That's the one we need. Because what I need to do is I need to count it down. So we divide this of -1 here, deduction. That's all right. That's correct. And then here goes to letter of the numbers. Sorry, I get a mind twisting here. All right. So 0, but we have the letter Z, which equals this amount here. So it'll be 6. So we'll keep on going down and down. So that's what we have to do here. That's what I was trying to explain. My apologies. So then we say here, letter Z, deduction, a decrement every time. And then what I want to do here is basically we're going to do here exactly the same, but then now, or let me just show you, our movement is exactly the opposite direction. If I save this now, you should see here it goes from top or highest value to the lowest value. Save this, refresh. You should see here, as you can see here, 6, 5, and then go down to 1. All right. So this is very nice. That's what I want. And then what I want to do here then is to just duplicate the entire item here. And then here, we have the same items, but here, of course, modify this to letter Z, modify this one to letter Z, and modify this one to letter Z. And then, of course, the max. Remember, we now want to extract the max, but we want to extract the highest max because we're going to start from this plus 6, what was that, somewhere here, and then etc., etc. So this min here will be now converted into max. If I save this, I should see something now. And surprisingly, we are not having what I'm expecting. All right, so let me double check. We have this here, tick height. Oh, of course. So as I told you previously, what is happening, it's a tiny issue, is when we are starting with this one here, when we are going down here, or the lower minus or the min values, then we have to increase the amount of pixels. Now we're going up. We need to decrease the amount of pixels because we're going closer to the 0. So that is here. So all we had to do here, because the formula was already correct, except here, instead of plus, we want to decrease it. We say minus. Save this. Refresh. There we are. So now we're getting very, very close to it. So the final one is eventually the last item. As we did here, luckily this is the easiest one because basically it's predefined already. And then here as well, exactly the same. You can just copy this. And I'm going to paste this in here because we have the line tool. I don't want to get this one. You might say, should we get this? Well, you could get it, but you have to change this move tool because we have to have the line tool here. The line tool here, and then this will be 0, 0, and 0. Save this, refresh. There we are. So now we have our shape here. Absolutely phenomenal. Final item is, of course, give it a proper background color. So I'm going to say here, we have the stroke. Remove that. Fill. If we save this, nothing happens yet. Why? Because we didn't say here we shouldn't have stroke here, but we should say fill. Save this. There we are. And now we have this. Or we could do here finally, close path. And then we say here ctx.restore. So we save and undo whatever we did all above. So no color would be being transferred to any other object. So there we have this. And now this looks absolutely phenomenal. So what I want to do here now is just to change some numbers. So let's change these numbers here. Let's say here 5, 5, 1. Let's say even 0. Let's see this. And then we say make this 9 and 9. If I save this, as you can see here, now it starts to change completely along with it. So what I want to do, maybe still this item, because maybe you might say, well, how do I go down then? So sadly enough, in Chartjs, we don't have a grace like here for the Y, and then there would be one for the I guess for the lower point. The grace is only for up. So what we can do here is basically say here a minimum value. The minimum value, well, we can do here right now, I'll just say -5, but you can make a whole formula out of it. But if I do this, as you can see here, we're now increasing here, and you can see everything increases. And let's just be sure that our numbers should be all correct here, because we're now dynamic. We change our scale here. If I say this, and if I say now 2, this should be 20, it should hit here. So let's validate if this really works as how I expected. So say number 2, and then max, oh sorry, that was this. So we can do 3 here, I guess. If that, what is this? 18 will be 3, and this here, number 2. Save, refresh. There we are. So you can see we are slightly off. All right, that's very interesting. So what we need to do here then is probably, and I guess why. So the reason why this happens is because of this negative value here. If this would be 0, but this, let's make this a grace of 15, we should have a proper item. And the reason why is we have this part here. All right, so I'm going to figure out this. We have to solve that one in here. So what we can do here is the following. Let's see, where's the item? I'm going to solve that right now. We have the tick height. So what happened is we cannot plus this, or at least not the way we expect this. So what I want to do is I'm going to convert that. So let's get that value. I'm going to say here constant. And I'm going to say here chart dot. Let's see, what is that? That's the options? Oh, what am I doing here? That's not the way I want. I want to have here the minus ticks. Let's call it like that. Minus ticks is chart dot. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going down here because I need to get off that value, or can I find it in the scale? Let me just pause the video to check this. All right, so I have found a very nice solution. So we have here, for example, our minimum value would be -5 here, and then for some reason it goes here additional. Anyway, doesn't matter. I want to get these negatives because these negatives are now giving us a real tricky item. So there were basically two ways. One of the ways I thought was to grab this value and then make it absolute, so it will remove the minus value. However, it's not necessary. There's an easier way, and I guess that way is even better than what I even previously thought. So we have here the y max, and the y max was based on how many values at the very top, assuming you always have a positive number of 0. But in our case, we don't have this. So what I'm going to do here is we have here the console log of y. Let's refresh. I'm going to show you that Chartjs has some built-in values that we can use. So if I scroll down here, you can see here our ending or our max is 40. Our minus or our min is -10. However, if I scroll down here, Chartjs figures out to give us a beautiful number of value range, which equals 50. This is directly in line with this number here, and we can double check this by confirming this. Say -50 here. There we are. Open up this. Scroll down here, we get here the value range of 100, so 60 by 40, there we are. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this one, and then go up here. We have the y max, no need anymore. We're going to do now this value range, whatever the range is here, and there we have it. So now what I want to do is I want to go back. Let's make this back on -5 to confirm our item here. All right, and then let's say our grace, I'll just put our grace back on 5. There we are. We have 5. We are now on 20. Let's see if this is correct. 15 and 20 on the first one. Confirm this. 3 plus that would be, or minus 18 minus 3 with 15, and then this would be correct. So if I would do this one, let's say here number 9. If I say number 9 will be to 5, so we deduct 4, and then up would be plus 11 to make it 20. We should have the ending here nicely on 20. And the lines are now absolutely perfectly connected with each other. So this is basically how you can create a range with, or a shading range in Chartjs. So if you enjoyed this video and maybe you want to do some other things, for example like this, I have another one where we are creating a range area line chart in Chartjs, which is also slightly different, but based on 2 lines here, then the space between will be colored. So that's another item as well to explore.